Hey there, I'm Neil. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the host and producer of Pause and Rewind, the podcast that chats to changemakers, thought leaders and role models who all share a common goal. They're striving to make the world a more inclusive place. And, let's face it, we need it. Each guest has a unique story when it comes to doing their thing, and we often know who people are in the now, but how much do we really know about them? Pause and Rewind takes a moment to explore the experiences, realisations and relationships in my guest's life that led them to where and who they are now, because everyone loves an origin story. We'll dive into tales, anecdotes and a little of what makes our guests tick. So whether you're here for insights or inspo or simply want to know about your heroes, this podcast is for you. You might never know someone's story, but if you pay attention, you'll hear it, you'll see it and you'll feel it. So, are you ready to pause and rewind? Hey there, James. Welcome to Pause and Rewind. It's my Pride season, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Oh, well, the pleasure is all mine. I've been following your content for around about just over a year and a half, and this is our first conversation. I'm really excited to get to know you more beyond social media, and I'm going to start with a big question, and that is, what does the world look like for James Dean right now?
Oh, well, what a question. It's really exciting, actually. I'm really excited for my life at the minute. I'm doing a lot of traveling. I've got a partner that we've been together for like the last 10 months. And so we're doing some traveling together. We've just come back from Norway. I work with Not a Phase. That's really exciting. And my own business. I'm a pet sitter and my work is pretty successful, actually, which is really nice. I've been doing it for the last 10 years. And I'm pretty much fully booked till next year and a half. So as a self-employed person, that's really exciting for me. And yeah, I'm just excited to see what the next year is going to bring me.
There's so much I already want to dive into just with that short introduction. And I'm going to start with Not a Phase. And if you're happy to just, for anyone listening, share what you do with Not a Phase and why that's so exciting coming up.
Of course, yeah. So with Not a Phase, I've worked with them for the last 3 to 4 years now. And I started off in like 2022, 2023. I did a national campaign for them, which was my face on a billboard, with a group of other trans and non-binary people. It was so exciting. We went to London, we shot in a fancy studio, did an interview afterwards. And yeah, it was really exciting. It was a whole week for Trans Awareness Week a few years back. So that was the start of my journey with Not a Phase. And then that led to doing an online peer support group. And that's what I do now. So that's ongoing. And we've been doing that for the last 2 years. We're actually this month, celebrating 2 years of our Trans Connect, Trans Mask Over 30, later in life edition. What a mouthful. But yeah, it's super exciting. And we do that every 2 weeks. And it's just a lovely group. It's really grown. And we started off, as you do with like a new group. And I didn't know what to expect. I'd never done peer support before. The first group was like 35, 40 people. And I just sat there going, oh my goodness, this is a lot. But we all got on so well. That whole first group was just people just introducing themselves and where they were from. And it wasn't just people in the UK, it was worldwide. We had people from Germany, Australia, America, all over the place. And then, it settled down over the last 2 years and we've got like a really core group now that come every time. And then we have new people joining all the time as well. So it's just really exciting. And it's such a lovely little community that we've created. And I find that because it's people over 30, our generation of people over 30 are like slightly different to, the younger kids, which are, doing amazing work in the community at the moment. But I think life for us was slightly different. We grew up in a different era. So things are slightly different for us. So we talk about all of that kind of stuff. And it's just really a wonderful place to be.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I mean, I love the fact that Not a Phase have all these different peer support groups for different demographics. It's really beautiful. I'd love to know kind of like from those first moments of feeling, what am I doing? I've never done this before, to now, what have you learned about yourself that you didn't know?
Oh my gosh. I think I've learned so much. That's a really cracking question, to be honest. I've learned that I'm more confident than I think I am. I suffer terribly with imposter syndrome, thinking that, like, why am I here? I don't know why people choose me for things, but that people really like that about me. And, I think the confidence for me is a big thing because, when I started to transition like 10 years ago now, my confidence was way down there and I didn't really know what direction I was going to go in, how long things were going to take. And, all of those struggles that people have when they first start a transition journey. And now that confidence for me has really come through. Like I can hold a space for people, like 18, 20 people, and just sit and chat to them and give them space to talk to me. It's just wonderful. Yeah, I've learned loads.
Yeah. And I imagine in those spaces as well, hearing about other people's kind of unique experiences, but also the shared experiences, that must be so comforting and affirming and provide such a space for just solidarity and togetherness.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I did a little video yesterday because we're 2 years in now, and I just wanted to celebrate that a little bit. So I asked a few members of the group to sort of send me a little video to say, what group means to them instead of me, because it's usually always me that does the videos for groups. And so I just handed over to them and say, what does group mean to you? And I've had some really wonderful videos back, which I'm a big softie, and yeah, I had to shed a few tears. I'm not going to lie; it was really moving, and really emotional. So I'm really excited for people to see that video when it comes out. But yeah, it's just a space where we can talk about, like you say, it's a unique experience, but it's also a shared experience, and
Yeah.
talking about things from a different perspective. They're things that unless you have those conversations, unless you have that space to talk and talk openly and talk freely without fear of judgment, that you just keep that to yourself, don't you? It just swirls around in your head. But once it's out there and you talk about it, you're a bit lighter afterwards. And that's what I love about group. It's a
Yeah.
special place. It really is a special place. And I think all of the Trans Connect groups are really special places. And, Not a Phase have created something that I hope will carry on for a long time, because it's so important, especially in this age we're living in at the moment, where people are trying to, make us feel that shame again. And I won't feel shame. I won't feel ashamed about who I am. I was ashamed about who I was when I was younger. And that was because of, things that went on when I was younger, Section 28, for example. So yeah, I won't feel that shame now. And I don't want others to feel that shame.
Not a Phase really is rooted in that pride and
Yeah.
joy, and that really
Yeah.
comes through. And I think that Not a Phase is an organization that really eradicates shame through joy and community. I think that's really beautiful. And I love hearing about how your confidence has come on and how you refuse to lean into that shame now, because we get
Yeah.
there with age, right? Speaking about
Yeah.
age, I think age and understanding ourselves really helps with all of that, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think Not a Phase have created not just Trans Connect, but Misfits and all of that. So, I got a t-shirt from Not a Phase a couple of years ago, Joy is an act of resistance. And that's what it is for me, is, I refuse to give in to people who are telling me that the way I live and the way I am and who I am is wrong. You can't tell me that. You don't know me. You don't know my life. You don't know about my transition. You don't know what transition means to me, because you've never actually had that conversation with me. And those people that are making changes at a government level are people that haven't had a conversation with a trans person and haven't included the community in that conversation. So, I refuse to listen to people like that, because they don't know our journey. They don't know our lives. And I think
Yeah.
Not a Phase have challenged that daily, and we see a lot of content from Not a Phase about, the toilet stuff, for example, all of that ridiculous stuff that went along. And they give out really important information. They work with the Good Law Project. So there's so much information there, but they do it in such a way that it makes you feel positive, and it makes you feel like you can do something. It makes you feel like you can make a change, instead of just, sitting there going, oh my God, this is awful. What are we going to do about this? And, they give you positive ways to make those changes, and who to contact, and, email templates and all of that kind of thing. It's just it's an amazing organization, and I'm really proud to work for them.
I know, cracking team, absolutely cracking team all round. Speaking of joy, as I said, I started following you over a year and a half ago now. Your content really, it does center joy. And whether it is you talking about your fitness journey, the community, I've loved seeing the latest updates about your relationship. As you said, 10 months in, that's been really
Yeah.
beautiful to see. And yeah, so
Blushing
you
now.
are someone that really kind of, I mean, it's just wonderful to see. It's wonderful to see. It's wonderful to witness. And I imagine that all of those things, we are facing not quite understatement, right? Really, really
Yeah.
challenging times. And so what does self-care look like for you right now through those challenging times?
Wow. Yeah. Self-care. Something I really neglected for a really long time, is
Mm.
self-care. And I don't think self-care for me started to happen until I started to transition. So I spent,
Okay.
42 years of my life not looking after myself properly. Yeah, I was into fitness, so that was kind of an outlet for my mental health.
Yeah.
But as far as self-care goes, I didn't start looking after myself emotionally until I started to transition. And I think you can kind of see this a couple of posts from way back when I started to transition 10 years ago. And there's a kind of a side by side of my face then in the younger me and my face when I started to transition, and they're just two different people. They're two entirely different faces. There's joy in one and not in the other. So for me, self-care is about, I still exercise, I still work out, I still, I'm into my fitness. That's quite a big part of that, is keeping myself healthy, because I've found a life now that I want to live.
Yes.
Whereas before it was like I couldn't imagine getting this far in life and being this age. So I really want to make sure that I focus on that. Keeping myself healthy is a massive thing, because like there's quite a lot of familial stuff that goes on, quite a lot of heart conditions in my family that affects me, that I'm on medication for. But keeping myself healthy, diet wise and fitness wise, is really important, because I don't want to end up not here. I want to be here for as long as possible now, like whereas before it was like, oh, well, doesn't really matter. But it does. It really matters to me now. So that's one thing that self-care, that brings me so much joy. Traveling, animals, they're quite a big part of my life. My partner, yeah, she brings me loads of joy. So yeah, that's all. That's all self-care to me. That's all self-care.
I love that. I love that. And taking your place in sports, exercise, and fitness as well. I've spoken about it with a lot of guests on this podcast. I'm friends
Mm.
with Liz Ridgway, the UK's first
Yeah.
kind of like femme PT, trans femme PT. I'm
Yeah,
friends
love.
with Liz. Like, adore Liz. It's her birthday this week, actually, so we're going to see her on
Happy
Thursday.
birthday, Liz.
I love that. For many of us, our journey is into sports and fitness, and that, more than our journeys into it, the comfort in it and the joy we find in it happens much later. I was not into it as a kid because I felt that those spaces weren't really for me. They were too boisterous, they were too rough. And actually, it took me a while to get there. I started in running. Now I love the gym, I love my classes, but those spaces, I didn't ever feel that they were for me to start with. Is that something that you felt, and perhaps felt, when you first started to transition?
I mean, fitness for me, and that in particular, is quite a journey for me, because when I was at school, fitness and sport was something that I could be myself in, because I could be boisterous, I could be a bit rough,
Yeah.
I could throw things around and get away with it as a girl. I could do all of those things. So it gave me a real outlet. So I didn't really feel like I didn't belong then. Whereas when I started to transition, that for me was when I felt like I didn't belong, which is kind of a weird sort of juxtaposition, isn't it, really? So for me, it's always been about working out with weights, going to the gym, working out at home. So when I started to transition, I'd always been to the gym before I started to transition, and I felt fine with that, no problem at all. I could go into mixed gyms, female-only gyms, no worries. But when I started to transition, it was very much, is everyone looking at me? Like my physical body is changing, and I don't feel like I belong in this space anymore. I felt really nervous. I didn't know which changing room to use. It was all of those things that you kind of worry about. When I didn't have top surgery till, crikey, it was 6 years ago now. Yeah, 6 years ago. So up until that point, up until I had my top surgery, I was really big. I had a really big chest, and it was really, really hard to hide. So it made it difficult for me to, number one, bind while I was exercising. So I used to bind my chest as much as I could. So it made it really difficult to breathe. But I felt like everybody was looking at me because of that. They'd seen me before, and then all of a sudden they were seeing me now as I was changing. So I stopped going to the gym because it just wasn't a comfortable place for me at all. And I started working out at home. And then I worked out at home for years and years and years. And then only very recently, and I mean like in the last 2 years, have I stepped foot in a gym again, which is just crazy. Like, gyms should be for everyone, right? It's just exercise.
Yeah, cool.
I don't understand what the deal is, but I think if they made those places more inclusive, and what I mean by that is everybody goes in there, don't they, just to exercise, and they're kind of getting on with their work and whatever they've got to do. But you kind of, there's always this element of looking around and seeing what other people are doing. And I think if they maybe just introduced a few, just a pride flag, it makes all the difference. Just that
It really
tiny bit
does.
of visibility makes all the difference. To know that that's a space that you can walk into and feel comfortable and be able to be yourself. And that's what that's about for me. And then when I did finally step foot in the gym, it was like, okay, so I look proper blokey now. I can go into the men's changing rooms, but then like it's a totally alien environment. It's completely alien. I've never set foot in a men's changing room before. I didn't know what the way they were laid out. Do they have like little cubicles that I can get changed in? And the very first time was just awful. It was really awful. Looking back on it now, I can laugh, but you know, like I walked into the changing room and there was no cubicles. There was nowhere for me to put my swimming shorts on afterwards. After I'd been in the gym, there was nowhere for me to privately get changed. So I ended up getting changed in the toilet. And I'm like, why? Why should I have to do this? Why isn't this space more geared towards everybody and everybody's body, not just, you know, cisgendered men's body? So there's people that might not be comfortable. And there's loads of cisgender men's that I know that aren't comfortable with their own physical body. Would rather get changed in a cubicle than get changed in front of a load of lads with, you know, stuff flying around.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
mean,
so
it's
that's my journey with fitness. So yeah, it is really daunting. It is really daunting. I've got used to it now, and I get used to you get used to how to navigate those spaces. And again, that's something that as a group at TransConnect we can talk about. You know, we can talk about what do you do? Like, what physically do you actually do when you walk into a changing room? Not, you know, what can you expect? What are you going to see? To somebody that's never done that before and is really wanting to get back into their fitness, and you know, like me, has found the body that they want to find joy in, and you know, getting fit and everything else is part of that. So yeah,
I think that so much of what you just said kind of ties into, you know, yes, the kind of like the trans and non-binary experience, but so much of what you've just said relates to everyone. Finding joy in your body, feeling comfortable, wanting to look after yourself. That should be accessible to everyone. So I think when we talk about the work that you're doing in these conversations, yes, they are often specific to certain communities, but they're also very common. They're commonalities as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was talking to my brother about it actually, and he was the one that kind of made me realise that it's not just about the trans bodies; it's about everybody's body and feeling comfortable with that body. My brother doesn't particularly feel comfortable going into a changing room. Like he said, I'd much rather get changed in a cubicle than get changed in front of everybody else. But some changing rooms just don't have them. So make that place inclusive and accessible and supportive of everybody, you know, because you want customers at the end of the day. You're a gym. Surely, you know, you should make that place okay for everyone. So it boggles my brain that they don't do that.
Honestly, the lack of foresight when it comes to the business case for inclusion is wild to me when it comes to these businesses. It's crazy. That is a whole other podcast in itself, James.
Isn't
but
it
for now, it really is. For now, I'm so excited about diving into your origin story. So with that, are you ready to pause and rewind?
Let's go. Yeah.
Here we go. Take me back. Tell me all about Little James.
So Little James was a real tomboy. To start off with. So I don't mind talking about my birth name. I will always call my younger self she, and I'll always refer to her as Janet. That was my birth name. So she was always into mischief, always into mischief. My mum used to say, if you're not mucky, you know, there's something wrong. If you're clean, I know that you're up to something. But if you're mucky, we know you're doing your normal stuff. So yeah, I was always up to mischief. There's a picture actually. I was looking through some family albums not so long back, and there's a picture of me and my brother. He's like pristine. He's got like his page boy haircut and his jacket on and everything. He was only a few years older than, and I'm stood there with like a little toy gun in my hand. I got white tights on, which were filthy, absolutely filthy. These big 70s glasses, a little hat, and it just looked, yeah, that's James. That's James. But yeah, it was a rough ride growing up. I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't all, you know, rainbows and sunshine. It definitely wasn't. But I think I found joy in those little things as well. Getting mucky, playing in the garden, climbing up trees, being a tomboy. That was baby James.
I want to come back to the rough ride if that's okay. For now, is there kind of like, you know, that anecdote that your mum shared is brilliant. What other things do you remember being told to you about what you were like growing up?
Crikey, what I was like growing up. I think I probably get more from my younger brother about what I was like when I was younger. There's 7 years between me and my younger brother. And my mum and dad worked lots of jobs. My dad was self-employed, and so there was not a lot of time when parents were at home, and I looked after my little brother. So he would say things to me like, "If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't know how to tie my own shoes." So I was always like there to help him and try and give him the best life that I knew how. Like I would cook for him and, you know, helped do his hair. He's a barber now. That's the irony
Okay.
of this. It's quite funny. But yeah, I think he said you always helped me, and that's the thing that I remember is you always just wanted to help people, and whether that was me or somebody else, and then that's carried on right through my life. But apart from that, I don't really know very many anecdotes, to be honest. I remember I spent a lot of time with my grandma and granddad, and I
Yeah.
was always running around and doing stupid things like dressing up in my granddad's outfits. Gosh, that's a memory you've just inspired there. My granddad
Love
used to have
that.
like a little brown work coat that I used to wear and a flat cap, and he had a pipe, and I used to run around the front room in the garden pretending to be my granddad.
That is brilliant. What an
Started
anecdote,
early.
kind of
It
like
started early.
look inside exactly that. That's brilliant. I love the fact that so many of us queer kids were running around in dress up, kind of
Yeah,
creating these kind of characters.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And my granddad was somebody that I absolutely looked up to. He was like one of my childhood heroes, and I love my granddad so much. And my grandma. I spent every summer with them, all summer with them. So yeah, I was always up to something, like pretending to be a different nationality. I would be Welsh, do a Welsh accent, do my Scottish accent for my grandma, and just like put on little plays for her and stuff like that. So yeah,
Love
gosh,
that.
memories.
The li the little entertainer. Well, we don't, it comes up on here again and again. We don't often take the time to reflect on these things and to really kind of have these
Mm.
conversations, which is why for me they're so important. Take me back to that rough ride then, growing up, if you're comfortable doing so.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, one thing that if anybody knows me, there's pretty much an open book, and we'll talk about pretty much anything. If it's going to help somebody else with their journey, then I'll chat about it. I think my rough ride, my issues with mental health and depression started when I was at school. I think probably secondary school more than junior school, but even so at junior school, you can tell how old we are because we talk about secondary school and junior school, don't we? But yeah, I was pretty much bullied relentlessly in secondary school, and because I was openly queer, I was openly gay. I was in a relationship with another girl at school, and apart from one of the other lads at school who was also gay, um, I was like the only out person. And because I fitted the stereotype, I had short hair,
Yeah.
I wore trousers, all of that ridiculous stereotype that people had back then. I was bullied pretty much relentlessly. So, was going between schools, you know, was shouted at. I was physically attacked. I remember one time I had like half a brick thrown at my head. Yeah. So that journey started really early with my mental health, and it was really rough. And I remember at school especially, secondary school I grew up under Section 28.
Yes.
So obviously people listening to this will know what that is, but it meant that I couldn't talk about what was affecting me at school and why these people were doing what they were doing. And I remember specifically sitting down with my PE teacher, and I'll come back to that in a second, but sitting down with my PE teacher, and I was in the changing rooms at school, and she was like, what's wrong? And I said, I need to talk to you about something. I need to tell you what's going on. And she was like, let me just stop you. I know, what do you mean? You've just asked me what's wrong. And she was like, I can't talk to you about that. I know. And now, I was, 13, 14 then? And to have somebody look you directly in the eye and say, you can't talk about that to me, instills that throughout many, many years afterwards. That just that comment itself affected me for decades afterwards. Section 28 affected lots of people for decades afterwards. And it brought a lot of shame. Like I felt like I couldn't talk to anybody else then about it. So I couldn't talk to my parents, friends. A couple of my friends knew, but obviously people at school knew, and that's why I was getting bullied. But they wouldn't let me talk about it, and
Yeah.
that's what I really needed, was just somebody to say to me, "That's not right. That's happening to you. These people shouldn't be doing that to you. There's nothing wrong with you." But I felt like inherently there was something wrong with me,
Yes.
and that's where my journey with mental health started, and that stayed with me up until I started to transition. And that's
And that's
I was 42, so we're talking 30 years of issues with self harm, with depression, with isolating myself, with not wanting to talk to anybody, trying to find help but not being able to find the right help. So yeah, there was a lot to deal with.
that's a long time to carry that for.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's what Section 28. It sounds a bit trite to blame something,
Yeah.
on that one conversation, but that one conversation happened to many, many, many other people, and that whole generation grew up with that with that shame, with that, you shouldn't be talking about this. We're not allowed to talk to you about it. We're not allowed to teach you about being gay. We're not allowed to speak about being in the community at school. Sex education at school was ridiculous. It didn't apply to me.
Yeah.
I was like, that doesn't mean anything to me. You're talking nonsense. So, so yeah, the whole experience of school, the bullying, Section 28, being told that, having lessons that didn't apply to me, it only just made that feeling worse, like there was something inherently wrong with who I was. And
Yeah.
that's why it's important to do the work that I do now, because it's not wrong to be who you are. Not at all.
No, and I think the validation that it must bring to people that went through that, to kind of even hear you talk about it and just think, actually, something like that happened to me too, because we don't often join the dots, right? And I'm just thinking
Yeah.
about, I was bullied for my sexuality in secondary school. Um, and one of my teachers said to me, well, if it happens again, take yourself out of the classroom. And I was the one who had to leave the classroom.
Yeah.
And even just thinking about you, even thinking about you experiencing that, triggered that thought in me of, oh, actually, yes, we're talking the 90s here. Yes, we're talking the remnants of Section 28. And I was the one that had to. So, these conversations are so, so important, and they are
Yeah.
really validating. I guess I'm really curious kind of to have carried that for, from your teens to your early 40s is almost 3 decades, right? We're
Yeah.
looking at 3 decades.
Yeah.
I guess, did you reach out for any support during that time? You know, was there anyone that understood?
That's a really interesting question, because I don't think I understood.
Okay.
Looking back on my life now, I don't think I understood. I didn't know anything about being trans when I was that age. We didn't talk about being
Yeah.
gay, let alone being trans. So I understood that there was something different about me compared to my peers and my friends at school, but I didn't really understand what that was. So for me to reach out for help, I was reaching out almost to the wrong people, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. Had I had the word transgender or what trans means been introduced to me at school, my life would be entirely different. Entirely different. I would have felt like there wasn't something wrong with me. That actually that's me. That's what's going on with me. Whereas I was kind of not pushed into, but you kind of choose choose a path, don't you, of which way your life is going to go. And for me, that was being a butch lesbian. That's who I was when I was growing up. So I was reaching out for help to the gay community, to people who were other lesbians. They didn't know about this underlying thing that was going on, and I didn't really understand what it was either. So again, I was then into another community that I didn't quite fit into, because that wasn't right for me. And it wasn't until
Yeah.
I was in my late 30s that I realized why that wasn't right for me, until I met another trans person and saw another trans person on TV. It was like, oh my God, why did nobody tell me about this before?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think if there'd have been places that would have talked about those things and I could have identified with that, then I would have reached out there. But I think I reached out to people like my teacher. I go back to that conversation that I had with that teacher, only to find out a few years later that she was gay, and could absolutely understood, you
Yeah.
know, but her hands were tied and she couldn't talk to me about it as much as she wanted to. And we did have a conversation some years later. She said, it broke my heart to say that to you that day,
Oh
because
my gosh.
I knew and I understood what you were going through, but I wasn't allowed to talk to you about it for fear of what would happen to her. So, and
Yes.
that's what Section 28, instilled in everybody, was that fear of, I might lose my job, I might be alienated, I might be isolated, and I might be picked on, all of this stuff, and that's what it should be shameful, not somebody's
Yes.
sexuality or gender identity.
Yeah, we often think about the impact that Section 28 had on us, but actually, I had never really given it
Mm,
the consideration it deserves about the impact that it had on those people who then couldn't provide the care,
yeah.
support, and affirmation and validation that we needed, and the guilt that
Mm,
must have followed that. Having that conversation a few years later with that teacher, did that
mm.
bring maybe a little bit of healing, a little bit of healing power?
Yeah, I think it was healing for us both, to be honest. I don't know if I was the only person that she had that conversation with when we were at school. I know there was a couple of other people who were queer at school. They were quite open and quite confident about who they were and, you know, their sexual orientation. So I don't know if they had that conversation, but I think for me and her, having that conversation years later it was quite profound. You know, it was, you can tell when you look into somebody's eyes, can't you? You know, how deeply something impacts them, and that certainly impacted her as much as it impacted me at the time, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That is a beautiful story, and I imagine that's a moment that stayed with you both.
Yeah.
Till today. Tell me about
Yeah.
this. Tell me about the moment of kind of finally having context for who you are and what you were feeling, you know, that representation. Because I put a post up about this the other day about meeting Nadia from
Yeah.
2004's
Yeah.
Big Brother. And
Yeah. Yeah.
Nadia was, you know, I was 21. She wasn't the first example of trans representation that I'd seen, but she was very much kind of like out there. And so what was that moment like of maybe being able to put words to what you were experiencing?
So there's a person who is he's a really good friend now, but when I first met or heard of, he's a guy called Shay Robertson, and he
Okay.
runs a Facebook group called Transpirational, and he was the first like openly trans person on the TV that I saw, and it was. I think that was my light bulb moment. There'd been a couple of, you know, flicks of the switch before that, shall we say, that didn't quite light the bulb, but this one fully illuminated it, and I was like, okay, that's I can completely relate to all of that, and it blew my mind. Shay appeared on an ITV show called Loose Women, and his wife Julie was the person who was being interviewed at first, and then Shay was introduced a little bit after Julie was interviewed, and he talked a little bit about his journey, his relationship with Julie, and, you know, his coming out as trans and how that's been for him, and I was just like, that's me, that's just me, and I was just like, right, okay, that's what I need to do, that's what I need to do. And then it was like the dam had opened and I needed to find out so much information about how I could go about being the person that I had always knew I was in the inside, but how could I start to manifest that properly and, you know, socially transition, physically transition, learning all these new words about how to get where I wanted to be. You know, that was the moment for me. I used to work at a housing trust about 10 years previous to that moment, and they had an amazing program of inclusion training, and I was part of that program for a while. So I not only received the education from the people that delivered the training, but then I became part of the training afterwards. And I'll come back to, remind me to come back to that in a bit. But that training had what they call community contributors come in and talk to us. And they had gay women, gay men, people who had disabilities, and they had a trans guy that came in. And I was just like curious. You know, I was looking at him and thinking, okay, how did that work for you? Don't like tell me all about it. And you know, they did. They told us all about their experience. So that was my first like little flick of the switch. And then later came Shay. So that was my big light bulb moment of, right, let's do this, let's get this started, because I can't live like this anymore. And then by then I'd found that path. I was like, right, that's where I need to go, direction. So yeah, thank you, Shay, love you.
Oh, I love, are you
Yeah, we're great mates. Yeah, he's always trying to get me to go to the Christmas parties, and I'm like, I can't, I'm working.
hopefully at some point. I get the sense of having experience, you know, as we said, a few decades of kind of like, you know, poor mental health as a result of those early years and realizations. Through to that, what was the changes that you started to notice in your mental health and how you felt about the world when those realizations kind of became clearer?
Gosh, I think the change in my mental health was, I don't use the word immediate when it comes to mental health very often, because, you know, very often it's not an immediate impact, is it? It's just a gradual thing that happens over time.
Yes.
But as soon as I made that decision to start transitioning, my mental health was, I won't say cured because that's ridiculous, but it improved 100-fold. There's a picture of me on my Instagram where I took a picture of me prior to transitioning and then when I started to transition, and they are two different faces. They're just two different faces. You can see the pain in one face and you can see the joy in the other face, and that for me was night and day. It was night and day. So my mental health improved. I came off antidepressants. I've been on antidepressants for 35 years, and I came off antidepressants, didn't miss them. didn't want them, didn't need them. I started talking more. I talked to everybody about how I was feeling, but with joy in my heart rather than the pain that I was feeling before. I think the only thing that affected my mental health then, after I started to transition, was how long things take to
Yes.
transition. The journey is slow, painfully slow. And it was slow for me back then, 10 years ago. It's ridiculous now. Like the waiting times are horrendous. So for me to be waiting 18 months for a first appointment felt like a lifetime, and it felt like this is never going to happen. So different things affected my mental health, but never in a way that I felt like I didn't want to be around anymore. Whereas
Yeah.
now it was like, hey, how can I make this happen quicker? So then it was trying to find out a way to go private. Well, how can I go private to get hormones? How can I go private to get surgery? So those were the things that I wanted my outsides to match my insides, and that couldn't happen fast enough. And you have to you learn really, really quickly that transition a lot of the time at the start is about patience, and just, you can't rush it as much as you want to, as much as you want that facial hair and you want that beard. You can't rush it. It comes eventually.
Well, it just talks so much around the fact that gender is a fact. Gender affirming care saves lives, and it means that people get to still be here
100%.
with us. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
you mentioned training at the housing
Mm.
trust that you worked at, and to come back to that, I'm curious.
Yes. Yeah. So the training was delivered by a group called INRF, which is not rocket science. And I don't know if they're still around, but they were wonderful. The training that they delivered was amazing. They took you through queer history. They took you through history to do with disabled people, to do with people of colour. There was so much involved in that training. It happened over a 3-day period. So you did 2 days in the classroom kind of thing, and then you did the day with the community contributors. And the community contributor bit was the bit that affected everybody the most. And so the training had been delivered year on year to new staff as they came in. And then one year, somebody didn't turn up to do the training. One of the contributors didn't turn up. And I could see HR was like in a bit of a panic. And I was really good mates with the head of HR. And she said to me, do you think you could step in? And I was like, what? You want me to actually deliver the training to people I work with? And she was like, yeah, you could do it. No problem. So I delivered that training, and I stepped up to be a community contributor. And the first few times I did it, I delivered that training as a gay woman, talking about gay female history and my history and how I realised I was gay and all of that stuff. And then not 4 years ago, they contacted me again. I'd stopped working for them for ages before that, but still remained friends and still was really good friends with HR, the people that worked in HR. And they said, would you consider coming back and doing the training again? And I was like, yeah, of course I will. No problem. So this time, delivering the same training to the same company, but as a trans man, and talking about trans rights and trans history and my history, and realizing I was trans on that whole journey. So it was really, gosh, I don't even know the words to explain how that felt. Delivering that training, first of all, as a gay woman, then coming back and delivering it to the same people as a trans guy was just a whole new experience, And some of the people that I delivered the training to as a gay woman came back and were doing it now. And I was delivering it to them as a trans man. And they were just like, I can't even believe it's you. You're like the same
Yeah.
person, but you're different. It was mind blowing all around for lots of different reasons, like for me and for them. But it was just wonderful. It was wonderful to go back. And I speak in those contributor sessions. I speak to them as I'm speaking to you now. Like I'm just James. I don't try and
Yes.
convince anybody of anything. I just am who I am. And you can either take that or you can leave it and like it or not like it. It doesn't really matter. So
Just bringing all of you into that, the different stages of your life, and just and the way you
yeah.
share is just so authentic and joyful.
Yeah, it's really important, right? To be somebody who, like, I grew up not being able to talk about who I was, and I don't want that for anyone else. And I want
Yeah.
people to understand that you can be authentic and be who you are, and not feel any shame about that, and feel joy about who you are. So if I can help somebody do that, it's just one person, whether I help one person or 10 people, and that's what matters. And never be frightened to be who you are. Never be ashamed. Mm.
Absolutely,
I'm not.
absolutely. There's so much power in riding out that shame and kind of, just owning who you are, all of you.
Yeah, yeah. I'm all in. When you ask me to do something, I'm all in. You get all of me, or you get none of me. So
I love it. I love it.
I try and do everything with a smile, but I do, I do try to do everything with joy. But I understand that, being trans, being queer is a really tough journey sometimes, and it's good to talk about
Yeah.
that, but it's also good to end that conversation with it's not all doom and gloom. You know, we are amazing people. We're an amazing community, and we deserve to live a life that's happy and joyful.
Absolutely, absolutely. Pet sitter today, and a booked and busy pet sitter at that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
just wonder, what did early career look like?
Oh gosh, early
What
career for me.
what did you think? What did you think was the goal actually at first? What do you remember?
What did I want to do as a job when I
Yeah.
eventually got
What
there?
do you want to do when you grow up?
Well, it's funny you should ask that question, because that question, what did I want to be when I grew up, was different than what did I want to do when I grew up. So what I wanted
Okay.
to do when I grew up was I wanted to be a vet, and
Okay.
unfortunately I was not academically gifted enough to be a vet, because it's harder to be a vet than be a doctor. Apparently, I know quite a few vets. My
It
best
is.
mate's a vet, and yeah, I just wasn't clever enough. So I was like, right, how can I work with animals and still do what I love? So that's how I came to this career that I do now. Yeah, I job hopped like you wouldn't believe when I was growing up. From my teenage years, I went from college. I went straight to work, and I worked in a leisure centre as a lifeguard for 10 years. Was a gym instructor, lifeguard. Yeah, just all of those things. I worked in retail. I've worked in offices. I've done all sorts of jobs. Never anything that really fit me. Everything that I really enjoyed. And I've been a pet sitter now for 10 years. Yeah, I started this job as I started to transition, which was really interesting, because some of my clients I started with are still my clients now, and they've watched that whole journey, which is something I really cherish, that they've just not gone, that's a bit weird. We don't want to work with you anymore. They've just fully accepted me for who I am and loved watching my transition along with me. So it's a really special thing. And it gave me the space. Being self-employed gave me the space to transition without any added pressure from employers or
Yes.
colleagues or anything like that. So all I had to talk to was dogs and cats and horses and chickens, and they didn't care.
I love it. Well, no, there's all accepting, all loving. As long as you feed them and give them attention, they're all
Exactly. Yeah.
they're all good.
Yeah. That's it at the end of the day, isn't it? Feed me, love me.
Winning, winning.
Yeah,
James,
winning. Yeah.
my final question for this segment is, looking back so far, what are you most proud of to date?
Oh gosh. I'm proud of lots of things. And being proud isn't something I'd ever thought I'd feel. And when you ask me that question, the thing I'm most proud of is still being here. Yeah. I mean, my struggles with mental health took me to some pretty dark places, and I didn't think I'd make it to 30, never mind 52 and thriving. So I'm really, really proud of that. And it's really, even now, it still feels like a bit. Oh, you can't say you're proud of yourself. That's blowing your own trumpet. You're not allowed to do that. But actually, yeah, I am really proud of that. Really proud of that. I'm proud of lots of other things as well. I'm proud of my business, proud of my partner, proud of my little brother. He's an amazing dad. He's got 2 kids, a lovely wife, and he's a barber. He's got a great business. He's such a little sausage. I love my little brother. So proud of him. But I'm proud of things I've done, like with my work with Not a Phase is I'm massively proud of that. Hugely proud of that. I'm proud of the work I did. I did some work with, this isn't a plug because I don't work for them anymore, but I worked with a Copenhagen grooming for a while when I first started my transition, which is a beard and male grooming company. And so, yeah, I approached them and said, would you work with the trans guy, try and help me get a beard? And they went, yeah. And yeah. So I worked with them, did like worldwide campaigns in magazines and on their social media pages, and did interviews and all sorts. So yeah, pretty wild when you first start transitioning to sort of all of a sudden be out there on like a big platform. But yeah, I'm really proud of that as well. So there's lots of things I'm proud of.
I think that this talks, this season is my Pride season, and it talks so much the fact of Pride is an all year round thing. It's an all encompassing experience that we need to tap into and remind ourselves to be proud, because it's not always accessible. And so many people on this podcast, when I ask them, what are you most proud of? It's sometimes heart jolting, but not always surprising that people say that I'm still here, because so many people genuinely don't imagine that they would be.
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, it does bring a tear to my eye. It really does. I'm like this in group as well. Like I'll get choked up, and it's just, being proud is something, like I said, that I never thought I would feel. And I'm not only proud of myself, but I'm proud of everybody else that's on this journey as well. Like it takes It takes real guts and strength and persistence and gumption, whatever you want to call it. It takes a lot, whether you're trans, whether you're queer, whether you're gay, whatever. It takes guts to be on this journey and to be authentically who you are.
Are you ready for some quickfire questions?
Go on.
What album, book, or movie has had a lasting impact on you?
So I wouldn't say it's an album, book, or movie, but it is a musical. So we're along the same lines. I love musical theatre, and I was first introduced to this musical when I was in my very early teens, in my second year at secondary school, in fact. And it's a musical called Hair. So I don't know if you know it at all, but it's set in the 60s. It's all around, all of that era. And I absolutely loved it. And that opened the door to me, to musical theatre for me. And that's always had an impact on my life. Going to the theatre, watching musicals, whether that's on the TV, whether that's in theatre, that's Hair is the one for me. That did it.
If we're talking musical theatre, it would be Rent for me.
Yes. Yeah, I've never actually seen that,
The show is great, but the movie is also really good. And it's got a lot of the original cast that appeared on Broadway. So highly recommend. I need to check out Hair. What's a saying you live by and one that you'd put in the bin?
The saying I live by is be who you needed when you were younger.
Oh, yes.
And I absolutely live by that. The one I put in the bin, it's everywhere, isn't it? Live, laugh, love. It's just like, no. Say it like you mean it. Don't just put it on your wall. Do something about it. And I think it's just, it's quite, it's those three words for me. And I just hate seeing anything with it on.
The wonderful Adele Barker, that was also her one for the bin. So it's a common one. What's been the best adventure of your life so far? By adventure, in the broadest sense.
The best adventure of my life so far is becoming James, without a doubt. Yeah. It's been a journey. I've met so many incredible people that I probably wouldn't have met if I hadn't become James. I've done work that I would never have done if I hadn't become James. Yeah, it's literally life-changing. Life-changing.
That is so beautiful. And what 3 words would you use to describe you and your origin story?
Gosh. Strength, persistence, and love. Yeah. Having the strength to become who you are as a trans person is huge, and it takes a lot of strength to sort of start that journey and to admit that journey to yourself. Persistence to actually try and get through that journey and doing the things that you need to do, finding the finances that you need to find, accessing healthcare is all about persistence. And love, love for yourself, being the one that chooses you instead of choosing other people's feelings about what you are or who you are, choosing your own feelings. So love for yourself and sharing that love with everybody else.
Yeah. I really feel that love from you and how you and how you operate. So yeah, I love that. Yeah. Let's fast forward a little bit. What exciting things do you have coming up?
Coming up for me, I've not really got anything sort of new planned in, but the exciting things for me is that group is continuing, and we do that every 2 weeks. And for me, I want that to continue for as long as it possibly can. So that is always and will always be exciting for me. And then as a self-employed person, having work booked for the next year and a half is pretty exciting as well. So so that's exciting. More travels with my other half. That's exciting. All of that's exciting.
Yeah. Well, can't wait to see it all. And just in terms of your work with the group, it was fantastic just a couple of months ago to see you recognised in the inaugural Trans in the City Changemakers Award. It was brilliant to see your name up there being celebrated and to see you really enjoying that celebration.
That was pretty mind-blowing for me, to be honest. I talked a little bit before about blowing your own trumpet, and you shouldn't really do that. That was something I was taught you shouldn't really do, be humble. But it was really humbling for me to get that email from Bobby, and I was like, I don't understand why I've been put forward for that list. Like, what? I've not done anything. And then people just go, what do you mean you've not done anything? We've not. You're open and you're out there and you're visible, and of course you make a difference. And I think even up until that point, I think I was just like, wow, okay, all right then. Yeah, I'll go. But I just still didn't understand really why. And then, when I got there, it was full of all these wonderful people. I talked earlier on about suffering from imposter syndrome, and I was just kind of stood there with all these incredible people going, I know you, and I know you, and I know you, and I know you. And, I've seen you talk, and I've done all this. And then I didn't really, it wasn't until somebody said to me, well, they're probably looking at you and saying the same thing. Like, I know you from social media, I know you from Not a Phase. And yeah, it's just mind-blowing to me. So you can't get the smile off my face about it at all. It makes me giggle, it makes me laugh, it makes me proud, it makes me joyful, it makes me lots of things. And be able to have my partner there with me to celebrate that was just phenomenal. So yeah, it was a wonderful, wonderful evening. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, everybody.
Brilliant. Well, thank you actually for the work you do, and I hope that a bit further down the line you're able to say, yeah, do you know what, I absolutely
Fingers crossed. No, I will. I will. I promise. I made that promise now.
Good. I'm not gonna I'm gonna hold you to that. You've shared a little bit about this already, but what brings you joy?
Oh gosh, loads of things bring me joy. Traveling with my other half. In my other half, animals bring me joy in every sense of the word. So whether they're domestic or out in the wild, I love animals. I love being out in nature. I live in North Wales, a little island called Anglesey, right off the north coast, and it is probably one of the most rugged parts of North Wales. It's beautiful. I love being by the sea. I love being on the beach. I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to collecting sea glass and pebbles and pretty things I find when I'm walking around. Helping people is probably one of the biggest things. Like, helping people brings me so much joy. If I can make a difference, I've said it before, if I can make a difference in someone's life in a positive way, then that brings me tons of joy. Seeing somebody like develop, step into themselves, brings me loads of joy, and to know that I've just been a little part of that journey is immense.
Yeah, and it sounds like that's been a fairly prevalent thing with you, sharing that story about your little brother and his reflections of you to today.
Yeah, I mean, I think I care a lot. I care a lot. I care a lot about people. I care about how people are feeling, if they're sad or, you know, I want to help them with that. If they're happy, I want to celebrate that. If they're down, I want to try and bring them up. And if they're down and they want to talk, that's what I'm there for. It's a lot. I've always said on my Instagram page, my DMs are always open. So, if you need something and I can help you, then I will. Whether that's, I can't help you personally, or I can find out information for you and come back to you, I'll always do that. So yeah, it's always been a theme throughout my life.
Beautiful. And the world needs it. The world needs it right now more than ever. So thank you for being that person. Do you have any words of encouragement or wisdom for anyone out there to help them get to wherever they're going?
I think that's just a really big question, isn't it? I think be authentic, be yourself, who you truly are, because people can see right through it when you're not. And if you try and be something you're not, then you're not being true to yourself, and that journey is completely different. So be genuine, be authentic, and be honest, and aim for the stars. Aim for the stars, because nothing's out of reach. You can do anything you want to if you put your mind to it. And I think I'm living proof of that, really. Everything I do now brings me joy. And that's been my life for the last 10 years. And it wasn't always my life. So say that, and this is how I've done it, just by being authentic. I think people can tell when you're not. And that shows through when you tell the truth and live your truth as well.
Hell yes, you are living proof. And I am so grateful to know you and to get to witness that joy that you live and that you bring to others. Thank you so much for saying yes. And I love North Wales, and so hopefully I can come say hi sometime. I'd love that.
Absolutely, yeah, love that. I would love that. And you're welcome. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real joy, honestly.
Same. See you soon.
I've
Take
got
care.
cheesecake from Smile.